everyone. Welcome to the Art Workshop. My name is Christopher Epling. On behalf of Pike TV, we really appreciate you tuning in today. This very special episode. If I'm not mistaken, in the catalog of shows, we're running into almost 100 episodes, which is amazing to think about. So if you want to, and I hope you will, you can jump over to Pike TV 99 on YouTube. Search for that. You'll pull up the playlist for all the different types of shows we have here on the channel. And there's a lot to choose from. If you haven't explored it, you're missing out. You can be informed, educated, inspired. It's all right there on the channel. But included with all the wonderful playlists is our little show, the Art Workshop. Click on that and you can check out, as of this show, 99 episodes, which is unbelievable to think about. Throughout the history, though, of working on this show for the many years we all have, the one thing that we've hoped to promote more than anything is you, the viewer. It's not about us, it's not about me, it's about art and what you could create. Now, there's a lot of artists in our region. We have many, many talented, various types of artists too. From basket weaving, to quilt making, to mural painting, to drawing, to sketching, to cartooning. There's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of different artists all around our region. So, this is your outlet. Think of it like this. You send us your art, include your name. Doesn't have to be what I draw. Send us what you're working on. Just let us know. We'd love to see it. And you can do that so easy. Send it to piketv99@gmail.com. Everyone's sent an attachment before. You've probably uploaded pictures to different social media. It's that simple. Include your name, maybe who you are, where you are, your age. We'll share it here on the channel. Because like I said, it's not about us. It's about you. And speaking about you today, today's show is very, very, very special for a lot of different reasons. Another thing we've tried to promote throughout the history of this show is inclusion. We want everybody to be accepted, everyone to be welcome, and everyone to feel safe, and everyone to feel happy and as you can be in this world, and know that you have people around you who are supportive. Now, one way to do that is, of course, letting other people know that you appreciate them and accept them for who they are. That's what this month's about, so we want to really focus on that. And one way to do that, as many that you can, besides just being, nice to people, is to let them know in a very personal way. And how you do that is maybe a greeting card. Now, we've never really done a greeting card before on the show. It's a little bit different because you're creating two different types of mediums here. Actually three. You're doing art, you're using font, and then you're using a craft. So you're actually making something with whatever you're doing, right? So hopefully, whenever we're done with this exercise, you'll have all the different types of skills and techniques you need to create whatever card you want. But we're going to give you an example today that you can follow with at home. It's super easy to do. You don't need a ton of materials. In fact, all you need is a pencil and something to color with. Crayons, watercolor. It doesn't matter. Anything that you have. If you don't have all the colors that I have here, that's okay too. But maybe create a card, and in that card, give it to someone you know who maybe is not feeling so accepted or maybe not feeling so included. Let them know that you, and on behalf of all of us who really do care, feel that they're super welcome and, just feel included, right? Who doesn't want to feel that way? And you don't really need a lot of this material. So I have a pencil, I have an eraser, I have a sharpener, and then over here on the side, and I always bring too many materials. You know that if you've watched the show, you'll see me. I'll bring 100 different pens and use 3. But you never know what you're going to run into, right? In terms of color for me, and another thing, if you've watched the show, you know I love watercolor. Watercolor is fun to use, and it's easy to use, easy to clean up. I also have a few different markers up here, alcohol-based markers. You don't really have to get the really fancy ones. Some of these I've bought really in a big pack of all sorts of colors, really cheap. Then I have a few aqua brushes, some pencils, and of course, the watercolor. And that's all you really need. Now, the really kind of stressful part of this, I'd say, in terms of making this, not really stressful, but stress the need to anyway, select the right paper. That is important. If you're making a greeting card, you have to remember, a greeting card, there we go, a greeting card folds, right? So if this was a card, it would fold this way. You'd line those edges up really good. You crease it down the middle. Now this is a super big card, I get it, but you don't really need a giant envelope to go with it, right? So if this was a card, you'd have the artwork here, right? You'd open it up. This is where you'd personalize it. So you'd maybe write a little something down here and then sign it. What we're going to try to do today, and we don't have a ruler, We're going to try, though, to use font in a way that looks nice and neat on the front, but inside is where you can do your personalization. You can also add some art inside the interior, too. Another thing to do on the back, you want to maybe include the year and maybe just put in there, I don't know, a little bit about, why you made it. Who knows? We could put anything at the bottom, but we have all this space and all these different avenues to go in to express yourself. And it's fun to make cards because, like I said, you have different ways of using, there are these different mediums to say something to someone else in a caring way, okay? So I'm using a landscape. That means your orientation, your paper is long, and I'm going to be folding it. With that in mind, I want to go ahead and get a clean sheet of paper. The one I had there earlier, we kind of roughed that up a little bit earlier by testing it out. And I'm going to go ahead and fold this once and crease it down the middle. And then this is going to be my first window of creating the art, which is the front of the card, okay? Now, on the front of the card, we're going to do something a little neat. We're going to draw a B, which is going to be at the top, and then our font's going to be at the bottom, and it's going to say yourself, be yourself. So it's sort of using, like I said, art and words together to make a point, right? Before I start, I want to make a line really lightly with a pencil down here at the bottom to kind of give me an idea. If I had a ruler, it would really be helpful, but I don't, of where the text will go. So I made one line here, straight as I could, and then I'm going to put maybe another line below it here. So you're making almost like a large rectangle. Very lightly, though, because you're going to erase this, okay? Now, in between these two lines is where you'll actually write yourself. Not write yourself, but I mean the word yourself. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 letters in yourself. That's great. You can divide that by 2, half it. You know how really kind of to go from where you need to start and end. What I mean by that is this. If there's 8 letters, kind of go in the middle here and put a line. Okay. Now, the R and the S in yourself is going to fall on opposite sides of this line. So we'll start with the R here. You just very neatly as you can, put the R, and then the S here, in between those lines. We've all done this in grade school where we're trying to learn how to write letters, right? You keep them in between those brackets is the idea. Now we have an E, and we have an L, and we have an F, okay? Notice how these kind of all line up. So there's that part. Now we'll jump and go backwards this way. And the reason we do that is it keeps it uniform as you can anyway. You have your U, you have your O, and you have your Y. Okay, yourself. There we go. I think that's going to work. Now let's jump up to the top and actually get the art. So for this B, we're going to do more of a stylized graphic B. It's not going to be an actual bee that you see, like a honeybee on a flower. We're going to draw a stylized bee. And we're going to start with a giant circle. Try to get it right in the middle of your card here, like that. Okay, that's the body of the bee here. Put a little stinger down here at the bottom, right in the middle, which is great because you know where the center is here. So you can line that up pretty good. So just put a little triangle there. Now we're going to go up here and we're going to put a few lines. We're going to go like this, 1. And you can put as many lines as you want. But inside of these lines, we're going to add color in a minute. There we go. Now, the top, we're going to add the head of the bee up here. It's going to come up and down. And then at the very top of this, now notice how I didn't make a full circle. This circle sort of just sits on top of that bottom, right? At the top, we're going to put a line coming out this way, another line going out that way, and we're going to add the little antenna here. One here, one here. Okay, now, the only thing we're missing is the wings. The wings are going to come off the sides. We're going to start right here where that circle or half a circle or portion of a circle connects to this larger person. So right there in that little tiny section, we're going to start. And we're going to draw a shape that looks like a wing coming down this way and then coming down this way, okay? Knowing where to start is super important. To keep it uniform, try to keep it as straight as possible. Find a place on your drawing where you can anchor yourself and you can create the shape you want. My anchor for this wing is that little section there. Now I know on the opposite side, if I start in the same place, it should come out around about the same way or the same look. We're going to see what happens though. Here we go. Now this comes off of the body just a little bit like this. Now the bottom of the wing is on this line right here. All right, let's do it. Start here, out, down, out, and down. There we go. 2 wings. That looks pretty straight, so I think we're in good shape. Now, of course, you'll use your eraser in a little bit, and you'll get rid of a lot of these pencil lines, okay? We don't want to keep those in there too long. But we need them for now because we need to know where to add color and where to put our different types of features of our painting or a little sketching, okay? We're going to start now with our brush. And I'm going to use this aqua brush, which, as I've said many times on the show, is really cool because it keeps the water inside it for you, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all sorts of color, different colors, like a rainbow going down the body, okay? I'm going to start out at the top with a little bit of red. Now, you just want to color inside of these little tiny brackets that you've drawn, okay? Now, I may not have like exactly the right colors for some of this, but we're going to try to match it up as best we can. Go inside the wing, add a little more there, okay? Now, really important, before you jump to the next color, take your brush off on the side and you want to clean it. You can rub it onto a piece of paper. I have like a little scrap piece here I can use, and I'll take it and just get that color off the brush, okay? Now, I'm going to use that same red, a little bit of it, and a little bit of yellow. I guess I probably could have kept the color on there since I'm mixing, but I'm nervous. I don't really want to put the wrong... There we go. That'll work. And I'll test it out down here. That's a little bit brighter. Make it a little bit more, though. It needs to be a little more brighter than that. That should be okay right there. Now, go in with that color. A little bit more, maybe. There we go. Now we're doing like a little bit of a yellow. It's a little bit lighter tone for this. Now that's something you got to keep in mind. We've talked a lot about value on this show when it comes to color. We've talked a lot about how you use value to accentuate different things that you're painting. And in this example, we're not really doing any shading here. We're mostly just wanting to capture a gradient from red all the way down to purple. The next color we're going to be using is straight yellow. So let me grab yellow here. That's a little bit of white. There we go. Test it out. A little bit more yellow. This should be it, I think. Let's see. Yeah, that's good. Now we're going to put, and if you start to put it down and it looks almost like it maybe needs to be a little bit lighter, you can put a little bit of color down and then get your brush a little more wet, and that will help lighten that color a little bit more. But this should work pretty good. Now I'm leaving a little bit of white in there, if you can see, in between these brackets. Now we're going to go for green. And the reason I'm leaving a bit of white, we're going to actually go in later and put black in there to separate them, okay? Now we're going to go for green. I'm going to use just green alone. Maybe a little bit of yellow. There we go. And we're going to go in now with our green. And you can see how this is slowly transitioning from one value to the next, right? It's not a fast change, it's a slow change. And the thing we want to really remember as we're working on this card is that, we're living in during our time in the history of people, we all have our challenges. Every single generation has its challenges, okay? That's something we all know very well. And really, I think what we should do while we create this is think about where's your place in those challenges. How are you going to address what we're all facing in terms of acceptance in our culture, okay? And I really feel that, people are individuals, and we're all different. We're all made different. We have different ways of looking at life. And I'm not trying to preach here on the show or nothing, but what I'm trying to do, though, is just remind myself as I'm working on this that I am one of many. The world certainly doesn't revolve around me, but in reverse, I help the world to revolve around each other by my decisions, my actions, how I carry myself, that sort of thing, right? With that being said, purple. We went from blue now to purple. Here we go, a little bit of purple in there. Across and down. Still kind of leaving white in there. Now, what I've done, usually, from what I can tell on the example, is that you go from red to purple and then you stop. But I have another little portion down here. I think what I can do with that is actually start to take it more towards, back towards red again. So I may put a little bit of purple mixed with blue, with a little bit of yellow, just to kind of make that change a little bit. See how that works out. Yeah, that'll be pretty good. A little bit more purple, a little bit more blue. There we go. It's getting a little bit darker down here at the bottom. See that? And this is straight across. The wings don't even impact this at all. And then at the main bottom down here, we want to darken it up pretty good. So we're going to use a very, very, very deep, deep blue. There's a little bit of purple at the main bottom right here. See? Just put that at the bottom, right across, and stop. Now, we have our gradient of color, which is exactly what we wanted. I'm going to clean my brush out really good. Make sure there's no pigment in there at all. The great thing about watercolors, I love it because it dries so fast and you can just keep going with it as far as you want to take it. But for the wings, we're going to wait till this color dries. And to show the wings are actually on the bee, here in a little bit we're going to put white around it. So this color will all be subdued underneath the wing, but the rest of the color will be nice and bright. Now the head of the bee at the top is a very dark black color, okay? Like I said, this is very stylized. This is not, drawing an accurate interpretation of a bee. This is a graphic. So the difference in that is when you work with something that's really stylized, you're really looking more for the symbolism that's in it rather than the actual look of something, right? You just want someone, when they look at this, to say, oh, that's a bee. I see the stinger, I see the antenna, and then they start to think, why did someone draw a bee on this? And then they connect it with the words below, and it's impactful that way, right? Graphic design is meant to be that. That's why they call it design, is that it's interpreted. And it's really cool. I don't know a whole lot about the history of graphic design, but I know a lot of it comes from, or at least early on, was in marketing, right? So, branding and things of that nature. Let's see. We've got a little bit more black now. This time we're going to go at the bottom, at the stinger, right down here. And we're not looking to make a giant stinger. We just want a little tiny triangle to pop down at the bottom like that, okay? Now, the antennae are exactly what you think, just a straight line coming out. But we're going to leave a little bit of white on the main end of it. So I'm going to color this in like this, and I'm going to leave a little circle of white right at the end. I don't know if you can see that well, but what you do, just don't paint the entire thing. Just leave out a little bit of a portion of it so that it looks like a little bit of light is reflecting on that little portion of that antenna there, okay? Aha, now it's starting to look like a bee more. The wings will be drawn in more later on when we use our marker, okay? Now, let's focus down at the bottom. Speaking of marker, you want to have a marker on hand, and this is where you're going to work with your text. This has to dry completely before we add any ink to it, because if we don't, it'll smear it and ruin that gradation of color. So let's work more now towards the lettering. When it comes to lettering, I'm terrible. I'll be honest with you. I've never been good at doing lettering. Some people are amazing at it. When I do my comics and such, I have to letter a lot, and if you've ever seen any of them, you know that this is not in my wheelhouse so much. I'm going to try to do this as straight as possible, neat as possible. And you know, it is kind of ironic, and I've heard people say too that a lot of artists who like to draw and, you know, they take their time and they may make, you know, a painting or a drawing that looks realistic, and then they go to write something and their lettering is terrible. It's like, well, you draw. How can you be terrible at lettering? But I am. I'm terrible at lettering. I was in school, and nothing's changed. There we go. Self, L, and F. Okay. Now, we've put a little bit of time into this card, right? That's really the cool point about doing something like this and giving it to someone, is that you didn't buy it, you didn't order it off the internet, you've actually taken time to sit down, use your materials, and create something, okay? Now, while this dries on the front, we're going to flip this over. This actually looks like 2 words, I guess, here a little bit, but that's okay. All right, we're going to open up the card now. We don't want to lay this flat down yet because it's still drying. Now, inside the card, this is where I would take, let's say, I don't have a ruler, but I have this. So I think one edge of this is pretty straight. There we go. And I'll maybe lay it down. And what I'll do is I'll put a few lines like this. One, drop down a little bit. Try to keep this, you know, somewhat of the same space between each line. And I don't know how much you'd want to write in a card, but this is where you'd put maybe a saying or some sort of encouragement, something like that, you know, whatever you want to say. And one more should do it. And then, see how dry this is. I can hold it up to the light a little bit and tell. It looks pretty dry now. Let's flip her over. At the bottom down here, I'm going to make another line. Right here, just one line here. There we go. Now I can put that to the side. Now inside the card, like I said, you have all these windows of opportunity to create stuff. You have the front, you have the interior, you have the here where you would actually write something encouraging, and then of course you'd sign it below, right? But on the back of it, I always do this. Any card that I make someone, I'll put something along the lines of made in the year 2023, okay? Something like that. And I'll ink this in later, but I don't know what you'd want to say or what else you'd want to do, but that's up to you. That's your personalization of your card there, okay? But for us now, what we're going to do is focus on this B again, because we have a few things now that is still on there we need to get rid of. If you can tell, I don't know if you can, but my pencil line goes outside of the black. So I want to go here and trace over what I want to keep, which I want to keep this wing. This is sometimes the hardest part when you're doing a graphic. Graphics usually have to be kind of precise, so you know you want to try to get it as close to being a mirror image of the opposite side as possible. It's something I struggle with. If I struggle at lettering, you know I'm going to struggle at making precise lines, that's for sure. Now the head up here, I'm going to trace it around this. And I'm going to trace the body all around, down to the stinger, around this side, down to connect here. There we go. Inside of the B, we're going to put a black line. And you can leave some white in there. It's going to separate each color. Now, here's something you want to stress, though. As you're moving up, coloring in between the lines, don't ink in the wings, okay? Just ink in between them, because we're going to add a little bit of white to help the wings look more like they're setting on top of the B, okay? All right. Now, hopefully this will dry pretty quickly. It usually does. Oh, I forgot something. You're right. I have to go around the antenna too. There. I said you're right as if I can hear you saying, oh, you missed that. But I kind of can now. At 100 shows, kind of interpret things a little better. Now, let it dry, okay? This is where I get nervous, because with the time constraints, of course, I'm not able to let this set for 10 or 15 minutes. we have to let it kind of move on, where of course we're recording within a certain time limit. So with that being said, I get nervous anytime I go to put color on top of other color. But we're going to try it and see what happens, okay? So I'm going to go over here to my white. Now I mixed this white earlier with some other colors, so might be a tinge of yellow in there from earlier, but that's okay. Now with this white, I'm going to go around the edge first, like this. I'm going to get a little bit more white in there. Now I'm going to go up like this. See how it's smearing just a little bit there? That's what I was worried about. Let's go on the outside here too. Now I'm going over top of my pencil lines, but I will be getting rid of some of those in a minute. So those won't be sitting around forever. Now notice how it said, please do not ink inside the wings. This is why, because now we have to go in here and put a little bit of white. This will help just, identify this as a wing setting on top of a bee. You can still see the color in there, but it just subdues it just enough so that it looks like it's actually more, graphically correct, if that's even a way to say it. It looks, you interpret it as being what it is, what it's meant to be anyway. There we go. That works great, I think. Okay. Now the idea from here, you want to let this dry really good. I think the lettering's pretty good. Now we're going to erase those guidelines we put in. Get rid of all those. Now you're not going to be able to find an envelope this size. This is a pretty big piece of paper. If you do this on a little bit smaller paper, you might be able to find an envelope somewhere. But it's okay if you don't have an envelope though. You can still give this to someone and it'll probably be cherished. I really like personalized stuff. I think it's great to receive something someone's made. In fact, one of the first times I usually do stuff like I used to do like Halloween cards and Christmas cards and all kinds of sorts. And I made a card for my wife one time, I'll never forget it. And in it, I created this little figure, this little character. And she went and made that character out of clay and mailed it back to me. We weren't living close to each other at the time. She was in school, and this meant the world to me. Here I made something. She received it. She liked it enough and appreciated it enough that she made something similar, connected to it, and sent it back to me. It just meant a lot to me. All right, now inside the card, I signed this with pencil earlier, but ink's always good because you know it's going to stay in there, right? So I'm just going to kind of trace over my signature there. And on the back too, don't forget the back, you want to use ink over top of all your pencil. Pencil will fade, it'll smear. Ink, you have probably good probability that it'll stay on here for a while. Unless you drop it in water. And it won't so much. 2023. Once that dries, we'll erase that. Go ahead and erase these in here. And you get the idea though. You trace over what you want to keep and you erase whatever's underneath it once it dries. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and write something in this card. I'm going to say, and I don't really need all these lines to do it, but not everyone who wanders, I'll make that bigger, is lost. ... Now, here's the really big question, because I want to credit whoever said that. Let me try to figure out who it is as fast as I can. Anyone who knows right off the top of your head, good job. That's amazing. It's a really well-known quote, though. And I'll find it very quickly here. Not everyone who wanders is lost. Quote. Here we go. And that was from, well, I'll be J.R.R. Tolkien. I should have known that. Let's go ahead and give J.R.R., some credit here. Tolkien. T-O-L-K-I-E-N. There we go. So, you can personalize your card any way you want, but this is a great idea for anyone that you may want to share this with, to let them know that, hey, be yourself. It's good with me, right? And I hope you've enjoyed it. I think crystallized cards are wonderful to create. Be sure and erase all your pencil lines, of course. You can add something in here too if you want more art. There's lots of different windows here to work with. So be expressive, create, share, and more importantly, when you do that, have compassion, because I think that's something the world needs a lot more of. I've been real preachy on today's show. I apologize, but we are working with a message here that I think is important in today's time and should be, considered. So on behalf of Pike TV, I'm Chris Epling, the Art Workshop, and all those folks who helped put this show together. We all appreciate you so much, the viewer. I want to encourage you and at least suggest to you, not only be yourself, be kind, but until next time, keep drawing.